How y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and we're going to be talking about an article that has been retweeted by a Mr. Jim Cornette. This article says WWE's mounting problems, audience declines, Saudi Arabia, and Andrew Yang. Written published September the 25th, 2020, and it's written by Gavin Bridge, and it was on Variety.com. So we're going to go through this article because I've skimmed it. So I didn't read it in detail. I skimmed it, but I know there's a lot of things in here don't really make a lot of sense. Okay, so it says storm clouds continue to gather for Vince McMahon's WWE. VIP has covered its audience decline in detail, and while this continues as a long-term concern, other issues are now rearing their head that threaten the company's bottom line. WWE stock is steadily trending down. The value on September 24th was $38.38. Is down minus 45% versus September 23rd of last year, with a real possibility it will continue to fall over the next few months based on analysis VIP has conducted over around 4 issues the company is facing. Okay, so the stock is down. They, of course, ignored the fact that the stock market is down in general. There's people, you could watch anything, and people have been talking about how the stock market has been taking a shit. I've just looked at my stocks like a week or so ago. It's not good. it's not good. The stock market is in decline. As you will see, as part of the things that, a lot of the things that are in decline have already been in decline. But let's see. So the next thing that's already been in decline, TV decline. WWE's flagship show, Raw, has lost around 2 million viewers for the most 2020 episodes versus 2015 levels. With Monday's 1.6 million viewers, 50% lower than 2015's show. Okay, why did you choose 2015, for starters? Why are we neglecting other contexts? But let's see if they come up with some context. McMahon has consistently blamed storylines for the ratings plunge without acknowledging that he is the man who signs off on those stories. The most recent case was in July's second quarter earnings call when he gave the perennial claim that WWE needs to work harder, having better stories in order to win back viewers. This was followed by farcical events on Raw, such as McMahon's son Shane, previously forced to leave WWE in 2019, suddenly having an underground fight club with no context as to why it exists or why wrestlers would want to take part. What? You think people are actually thinking about this that deeply? So this tells me that this Mr. Gavin Bridge is probably just a smark. Or say, third quarter's key storyline has centered around a mysterious group of masked wrestlers with a vendetta, who WWE's own website knew were about to attack the company seemingly without telling WWE security, and whose motivations and actions were as damp as a squib could be. As damp a squib as could be. Okay, so here we go. This is what I actually wanted to do this video for, because a lot of this stuff is just these guys repeating the same shit they've been saying for like 10 years. It says reason why U.S. viewers stop watching professional wrestling. It says, quote, exclusive data from pollsters YouGov suggests the main reasons behind the audience decline concern lower quality writing. If McMahon is serious about storylines getting better, the famed workaholic may need to admit he could do with beginners screenwriting class in order to learn about story structure and character arcs to win back the sizable amount of viewers. Okay, that's personal. That's personal attack, isn't it? Because he's not personally writing the show. So when you say that he needs to take a screenwriting class, for starters, you kind of like he's the most the most successful motherfucker on TV. You know, like he's one of the most successful people in TV. Like that's completely divorced from this conversation. It's like he doesn't know how to write TV. It's like he's only been doing it for 40 fucking years. You know, like who else has been writing TV as long as he has and has the same level of success? That's what you should be comparing it to. You know, like you can't compare it to the NFL because NFL is not scripted. You can't. The same with the NBA and hockey and all these other sports. What other TV show has been on TV for 20, 25 years and still hits number one in ratings? What other TV show? This is it's silly, but let's go through this this information that they posted here, because this was pretty random, and I may make this the thumbnail. But it says reasons why U.S. viewers stopped watching professional wrestling. It seemed more cartoonish than when I liked it, 30%. Storylines were not as good or interesting, 29%. Characters were not as good as interesting, 28%. Matches were not as good or interesting, 26%. The content was more geared towards children, 14%. Announcing was not as good, 9%. The show wasn't listening to the fans, 7%. Other, 24%. Not sure, 12%. Now, when you do a poll, right? Just about every poll can be, the thing about polls is they can be manipulated by, depending on how you frame the question and the kinds of people that you're talking to, you can pretty much frame this kind of stuff. It depends, right? So I went to look for the YouGov poll, and if you click the poll, the link that is provided for the poll, you get some shit about the Supreme Court justice, and you don't get anything about WWE. But let's go to YouGov while we're here and put in WWE, because that's what I'm going to do. And you're going to take my word for it, because I'm not going to screen share on this. And so you have SmackDown, 25% SmackDown, some shit about, the popularity of the show. But I put in WWE in the YouGov.com search bar. And I get some shit about Raw, but nothing talking about, why people don't watch the show anymore. I mean, it's possible for people to age out of things, But let's see. I'm skimming down now to look to see what is. I don't see it. So I guess we're going to have to take their word for it as far as their information is concerned. Now, this is why Jim Cornette had retweeted it, because it agrees with him, so obviously it's right. You don't do any more digging than that. But whatever. So let's continue through the article. It says viewing status of professional wrestling adults among viewing status of professional wrestling among U.S. adults 18 plus. And then it said, it's color coded. It's a pie chart. Okay. So it's going to be difficult to watch, to read rather. Here, so it's color coded, but the colors are not as obvious as a yellow or a blue. It's 4 different versions of blue. I'll probably I'll take a screenshot of this too, and you guys can look at it, because it's I'm not about to sit here and be like, it's teal, it's sky blue. I'm not about to go through that. I'll just post it. I'll put both of these on the placard. So wrestling shows former viewers used to watch, and it says Raw 55%, SmackDown 55%. So that's equal, more than half of both Raw and SmackDown's viewers, well, almost 60% are gone. NXT 10%, AEW Dynamite. Why would you have that there? It's only been on TV a year, and it still lost 3%. So it lost none of the above, 28%. Okay, all right. So a decline in kids audience. It says WWE reoriented itself in the mid 2000s to more family friendly content. Raw and SmackDown carry TV PG ratings, unlike the vast majority of shows on USA and Fox. This was a smart move at the time, as it opened the door for larger sponsors who didn't want to be associated with the sex and violence that fueled wrestling boom in the 90s. And then it says kids cable TV networks average primetime audience. And then it's a bunch of lines, but it's Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Disney Junior, Nick Jr., Cartoon Network, which are all in decline, by the way. That's the overall talking point. They're all in decline. Unfortunately, children are deserting TV at a far greater rate than overall viewing. Between 2006 and 2019, primetime viewing of the 9 kids networks in the chart fell by 49%. In comparison, CBS primetime audience fell by 19%, Fox and ESPN both by 9%, USA by 27%, and the TLC viewership actually grew by 35%. So they're telling you here that TV is in decline in general, right? So that's a dead giveaway of what's going on. But they also did not mention cord cutting. So you do have people jump into streaming and all that type of stuff. They may get into that. It's just too obvious for you to ignore. It's too obvious for you to ignore that, people are more into streaming and less into TV. But some of these networks now are trending from 1.5 million viewers down to less than 500,000. He said, this is clearly not the only reason behind the overall audience decline for Raw, but it does illustrate the futility of not adapting with the times. So this is an attack on the PG audience, the PG ratings. With the core audience deserting linear TV for streaming or video games, okay, fair enough, they mentioned it. There will come a point where WWE has to decide to target content to the audiences who do watch TV or pivot distributing strategies to where kids are watching. They do have streaming services. They have their own streaming service, and they've had their own streaming service for a while now, but we'll get into that later. Continuing the status quo is akin to McMahon putting his head in the sand at a time where long-term planning is most needed to avert further eroding of the audience. What are you talking about? They have their own streaming service. They have YouTube. They had a Facebook show, not too long ago. What was this? What was the show that they were doing? They actually doing another show. They doing this thing called Hyundai. I forget. I think it might also be online. They have tons of online content. They don't have a ton. Let's say, because the Mixed Match Challenge was the Facebook thing. They haven't done that in a while, but they did the Mixed Match Challenge on Facebook. They have plenty of content for YouTube. They are already out there and doing that stuff. Like, they already have a TV. They already have, the WWE network. What more do you want to do? They're already diversified as far as viewing experiences. Like, you would think that if you were an analyzer of media, you would mention, like, oh yeah, they have their own streaming service, but maybe the streaming service isn't doing that well. Or, like, I would say Peacock, which is owned by NBC, is a larger platform. They actually do host some WWE content, so it's not like you can even ignore that. You may even say that maybe NBC would buy or be willing to buy out the WWE network, which is entirely possible. I said that when I heard Peacock was coming. I was like, well, maybe WWE is just going to sell the network to NBC, or they'll sell it to Fox or something like that. And because remember, there was a lot of talk that Disney or somebody was going to buy the WWE network. There's always that possibility, because you do have a lot of people, a lot of different streaming services, and there are going to be more coming who pick up wrestling, because wrestling also, WWE, I should say. I can't just say wrestling anymore because there's other promotions. But you do have other promotions that have streaming services and different things like that. Other big companies that are bigger than WWE, and they could cut into their market share by having Disney is going to cut into everybody's market share, even though it's probably not doing as well as they would like. And these sorts of things, they compound. So WWE being a $1 billion company, but being small in comparison to NBC and Disney and Netflix and all that type of stuff, they could easily have their content absorbed or licensed by, like they used to do with Hulu. They would license like Raw or something like that to Hulu. They do that with Main Event, so if you want to see Mustafa Ali, you could probably see him on Hulu. But they license this stuff out, and then they get a chunk of money in return. So that's likely what's going to happen to the network. But you should definitely mention that talking about they're not adapting with the times. It's like they get huge contracts for TV, so they're going to keep doing TV. So until those huge contracts disappear, they're going to keep doing TV, and they already have a streaming service that is set up that if in case you do have TV go away, like USA or Fox or something like that can't give them the money that they want, they can always just put Raw up on the network, and then they don't have to. Well, they still do have to worry about TV ratings, like as far as not the TV ratings, like viewer stuff like that, but they will have to worry about the rating, basically TV PG, TV MA. They will have to worry about that because that'd be like their sponsors and everything. But they wouldn't have to worry about people trying to chase down what the quarter hours were, because that's stupid. It's stupid. Okay, so going back to the article. Saudi Arabia deal. WWE signed a 10-year arrangement with the Saudi General Sports Authority in 2018 for an undisclosed sum in return for running 2 special events on par with WWE's major events such as Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. The revenues from this deal helped boost WWE's bottom line, which in turn fueled its stock price increase. Wrestling analyst Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics provided VIP with exclusive analysis to ascertain the value of these events based on the increases of our other media, quote-unquote, revenue in quarters where Saudi Arabian events are held. It appears each event nets WWE around $50 million. Okay, so digging deeper into WWE's finances, data, and the company's SEC filings report on the total amount of money and accounts receivable, i.e. money owed, and how much of that is owed by the largest customer. Analysis by WrestleNomics has tied the sudden increase in second quarter 2019 for the amount the largest customer owes with the Saudi Arabia events, with the implication that SGSA is that customer. WWE is facing an obvious short-term financial hit as the COVID-19 pandemic rages on and Saudi Arabian events can't be held, assuming, as likely, that SGSA has its large balance of payment owed with WWE. COVID-19 is having a second impact on WWE's bottom line, with the price per barrel of oil $40 lower than the premium level Saudi Arabia needs to balance its budget. This is actually pretty good, $70 to $80 per cent. It's looking unlikely that SGSA will be able to pay WWE anytime soon. Now, this is actually good analysis right here, because I wouldn't have thought about this. That Saudi Arabia is a country that their major export is oil. But if oil prices are going down, you're going to look at maybe they can't pay the amount of money that they used to be able to pay for these shows, especially when you talk about after the COVID hits. So that's a legit concern. Thank you. Thank you, article. You've only made a good point that I didn't think of or that anybody else couldn't have thought of long before. But I am concerned about WrestleNomics. I've seen some of their tweets and stuff like that. I'm not sure how solid their material is. I'm not going to, say, don't listen to them, it's bullshit. I'm just going to say, I'm not sure. When somebody is colored with the smart, like when I hit them with the smart highlighter, like I am with this Gavin Bridge guy, you kind of have to say that they trend negative. That's kind of what it is when you have the number one show on the network, almost 2 million people are watching the show, and people still are saying, you're a failure. You're like, I'm number one in all of TV with the exception of like a couple of shows and maybe, Tucker Carlson and Monday Night Football or something like that. Otherwise, I'm number one and I'm a failure? What the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like you're comparing 2020 to 2015 without recognizing any of the changes that took place in the world. It's silly. So you do kind of have to pay attention to these things. Like what it's okay to read what they're saying, because what they're saying may be, like Michael Malice says something that I find it can be particularly useful. He said the media is oftentimes factual but not truthful, meaning they will say the facts, but they will leave out certain context. And I think that's what the wrestling internet has been doing for a long time. Like they'll say, oh, it's supposed to be 10 million people watching Raw because 10 million people watched Raw in 1999 or something like that. It's like, no. They'll say, well, wrestling is more cartoonish now than ever before. I'm like, more cartoonish than when you had a pig farmer and a plumber on television? More when you had a wrestling tax collector? When you had a garbage man? When you had a hockey player and a baseball player? It's goofier now than it was then? Oh, okay. Objectively, okay. I can't. I mean, you guys do the number guys, right? You're the numbers guys. I mean, do your thing. Okay, so now we get into the political stuff. The independent contractor status is basically where they're talking about Andrew Yang. The final issue facing beleaguered McMahon is the WWE's new nemesis, former Democratic presidential nominee Andrew Yang. A childhood wrestling fan, Yang took umbrage at WWE's recent ban on their performers engaging with third-party outlets and sponsorships on social media platforms. WWE's stance is that it invests time and money in the IP of performers used on TV who make it part of their big sponsorship deals with the likes of Mars and Mattel, and they don't want this particularly jeopardized by wrestlers signing deals with rivals. Yang is not questioning this. He kind of is. Where he raises issue is that WWE has no right dictating to non-employees. Given WWE's wrestlers are not in fact employees of the company and thus don't receive benefits like full health care and the pension plan. That's not true. You do dictate to non-employees. You do that all the time. It's like saying my mom hired a guy to rebuild her porch. She couldn't tell this guy not to come to her house at 4 o'clock in the morning. He's an independent contractor. How dare she tell him he can't appear before 10 o'clock? How dare she say he's got to be gone by 6? She owes him health care. Stupid. Instead, they are independent contractors, meaning they technically have the right to work elsewhere. Although WWE contracts prohibit this, they sign that right away. That's the thing here. You, as an independent contract, you do have the right to go work elsewhere. But if they're going to pay you for exclusivity, then you get paid for exclusivity, meaning you no longer have the right to go anywhere else because you are paid not to. So they can't force you not to. They can only say, hey, we sign performers for exclusive contracts for 5 years or 2 years or 3 years or whatever. And you might be able to, after a couple of years, make more money doing shots for ROH or Impact or whatever. But it's basically just you capitalizing on WWE or your WWE exposure. So we're gonna pay you an exclusive deal, a bonus. Let's say you're gonna have $250,000, and then we're gonna give you an exclusive deal of $100,000 or something. I'm just making numbers up. And you're gonna say, well, I'm giving you another $100,000 per year for exclusivity rights, which is probably more than you would make if you went out doing these shots for Ring of Honor, Impact, or whatever. And then people are like, what? You're gonna pay me to not work for other people? Okay, and then that's what it is. Like, that's not hard to explain. And then you have people in other industries who have similar contracts. Like if you worked in for defense contractors or like NASA or something like that, you may be an independent contractor, and they may say, we don't want you working for competitors. We don't want you. So they may sign you to an exclusive contract, or maybe all their contracts are exclusive. But WWE has also let people work other shows just as much as they've stopped. They've stopped the higher level people. You're obviously not going to see Roman Reigns or Randy Orton go work in Ring of Honor because it doesn't make any sense for them. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Your issue is probably going to be way down the card. So your Mustafa Ali's, your Cedric Alexander's, and then people below them, your people in NXT, But you may have your concern there, where those guys may want to. They're not being used on NXT. They may want to go do this show, want to go do that show, want to go do this show and do that show. And then you have that issue of, Triple H has to sign off on it. And is it going to be televised? Is it going to be streamed? Who is the promoter? What kind of operation are they running? It's going to be a lot of stuff going on. So farther down the card, you probably have that problem. But if you think you're an independent contractor, we're going to get Randy Orton at Death by Dishonor. No, you're not. You're not. He's going to jack that price up so goddamn high that you probably wouldn't make the money back because he's risking his body. And even if he doesn't do anything but go out there for 30 seconds, he could twist his fucking ankle on the stairs and cost him, a big payday. So no, he's probably not going to do that. And you have to allow people as adults to make their own decisions. And if they want to sign exclusivity deals, then they should be able to sign exclusivity deals. Now, Brock Lesnar doesn't have an exclusivity deal because he always had in his contract that he can go work in UFC. Or he's also an independent contractor. So he's sort of enforcing it where, if he wants to go fight, he has to, let Vince McMahon know, hey, I want to go fight. And then he can go fight, He did it before, he went to fight. I think he fought, what was it, 2018, 2017 or something like that. And then wrestled at SummerSlam later that year. So it happens. But you can't tell these people anything because they're politically minded. And that's why I say about smarks, I kind of colored them a little bit. I need to finish this article because this thing's going on forever. Instead, they are independent contractors, meaning they technically have the right to work elsewhere, although WWE contracts prohibit this. The status quo means that they aren't eligible for business travel reimbursement and health insurance if they fall sick, but are covered for workplace injuries and now are banned from selling T-shirts or making non-company approved media appearances. You can make, if I remember correctly, Dolph Ziggler just talked to Andrew Yang. I didn't follow because apparently nothing important came out of this conversation. But I do believe that Dolph Ziggler just had an interview with Andrew Yang. Okay. Like people, the thing, and people do these things all the time. And they have tons of media appearances. And again, you can sell t-shirts. You just can't sell your WWE shit. You can do whatever you want. Like Sami Zayn does his serious stuff. Like he does all that stuff on his own. They have not stopped him from doing that. They didn't send him like a memo or something that said you have to stop selling whatever it is you're selling for Syria. Big E is doing stuff for the Breonna Taylor and the George Floyd riots and all that shit. These guys have outside business ventures. They do things outside of this all the time. Randy Orton just launched a clothing line. This idea that they are somehow shackled to Stanford, I don't know. That has to come from the internet. Just because people don't do things doesn't mean that they can't. You may want to ask them if they want to. That's the first thing that you should be asking. Like if you're going to run the mill of this whole independent contractor thing, you should ask people if they wanted to do that. And then you say, okay, you wanted to do it, but you can't. Like I heard some stories, and I really try to avoid this stuff, but this actually ties into what I was, my talking point, my point right now is that Trent Seven, who wrestled at NXT UK, wanted to do a different show, but it was very close to when NXT UK was running this show, and Triple H basically just told him like, nah, you can't do it. And then people were like, oh, see, look, they held him back from doing this show, and I'm like, it was close to the show where he was, he's supposed to perform for them. He might get injured at this other show. It's not like he had like a long period of time in between, which probably wouldn't have been a problem. But it was very close to the same time frame that NXT UK, I think, was taping, or they were doing a loop or something like that. But it was important for him because he is an important part of the NXT UK, even though it may not seem like it because they don't really push him as like a top star. But you don't have to be the top guy to be important to the brand. You might be an important part of the mid card or important part of the lower card. But basically, he got told he couldn't really do this show, and I don't even know that for a fact. Let's just use this as an example because this is something I read on 4chan, so it might not even be true. That he was trying to run a show, or maybe he was running the show, or something to that effect, and Triple H told him, "Nah, you can't do it." But again, you have to make sure that it's something that people wanted to do, and then they were prevented from doing. And then before you make this conclusion that we need to get the government involved, it's like, well, for starters, you need to see if these people are okay signing off their exclusivity deals. Because if you don't have to, you don't have to. I'm not saying that everybody's Brock Lesnar, but you just don't sign the contract. Like if you're some, Alex Shelley did a couple of shots at NXT. He did one shot at NXT. Didn't cost him anything. He got to be on NXT TV and everything. He did one match because he negotiated for one match. He did one match and then went on about his business. The Cruiserweight Classic, they, paid those guys for those appearances. They went on about their business. If you want to stay though and have storylines built around you, merchandise built around you, and all that type of stuff, you're probably going to have to sign an exclusivity deal. Sounds fair to me. You're getting more money. So what's the problem here? Again, I need to finish this. So no more interruptions. Should WWE wrestlers find themselves classified as employees, it would cost the company millions as expanded benefits are applied to them, and then you will have a lot of people getting laid off. With Yang vowing to take this to the very top, this is a chance WWE's revenue will take a hit in future years should its wrestlers and performers be legally found to be employees. Well, they've already been doing this, as I said, prior to this ordeal. We've been going through this stuff for a while now, and people keep filing these lawsuits. They keep getting thrown out. It's not illegal. What they're doing is not illegal. It is simply, you just don't like it. And this is like a typical liberal thing. You know, I don't like it, therefore it must be illegal. Like, it's not illegal, it's perfectly legal. But I still don't like it, so it should change. It's like, mind your business. Fuck off. Like, if you want to start a wrestling company and pay people health insurance, do it. This is, and you know, let's see how long has this video been going on? 30 minutes. Okay, let's talk about this. I'm gonna talk about this for 1 second. Probably spend another 2 minutes talking about this. Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you've been a wrestling fan for a long time, you should know that there was a thing called Lloyd's of London. It's basically an insurance marketplace, and they no longer cover wrestlers. And the reason why they stopped covering wrestlers is because people like the late Road Warrior Animal, the late Road Warrior Hawk, Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, all these guys, they would get these Lloyd's of London insurance policies, and then they would, of course, they would just basically, it was their insurance. Then they would get hurt, like, you know, Rick Rude would get hurt or whatever, and then they would be collecting from that insurance, but they would still be working. Basically, they would draw insurance, and then they would go and continue to work, because there would be things that they can't do. For instance, they might be able to make an appearance, and an appearance might mean they might be able to throw a punch, they might be able to throw a kick, but they can't take a bump, right? So it might be like, so you may have a performer come to the you know, a Rick Rude, because I think he's like the number one guy who was doing stuff like this, is he had this Lloyd's of London policy from when he broke his back, but he was still participating in wrestling. You know, this is before he was in DX and all that type of stuff. So he retired, he started collecting his Lloyd's of London policy, and then he was still involved in wrestling. So he was still doing stuff like the things that where he would fall on his back, like he would do, like, I forget what's his neck breaker called, but the neck breaker move, he would still be doing that. He wouldn't go in there and like do Rick Rude versus, you know, and do a full match, but he would, you know, get knocked down. He would try to avoid it if possible, but he would take punches. He would do stuff like that, and then it became so prevalent that Lloyd's of London stopped with wrestlers. They're like, no more wrestlers, you know. And I was thinking about doing a video on it, but I'm just going to talk about it here. This is the problem with, you know, you talk about insurance. You know, this is why these guys should be paying it for it themselves, because it is sort of a thing where you do have people who will ruin it for everybody else. I believe Ric Flair also had a Lloyd's of London thing and was drawing on that and still wrestling. I mean, these guys have been doing this shit for years. These people don't talk about that stuff, though. Either A, they don't know about it, or B, it doesn't fit the narrative, so they don't care. It is, a lot of these people are being worked. Okay? You're being worked. But, you know, as long as you can wrap it in emotional language, then this stuff makes sense to them. But it doesn't make sense to me because I'm smarter than that. But thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Sorry for taking up so much of your time with this shit. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And I'll talk to you guys later.